Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 191st installment in the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Nitzavim Vayelech, another double parsha, as we get further on in the book of Deuteronomy, right? As we're getting closer to Rosh Hashanah, etc. So the parsha speaks about the renewal of the covenant, the warning against idolatry, repentance, who the Torah is accessible by, etc. And Parshas Vayelech speaks about Hakil, the king's reading the book of Deuteronomy, Moshe taking his leave, right? The Torah's testimonies. What interesting things to speak about. So the Torah tells me, book of Deuteronomy chapter 30. Right, chapter 30, we'll start with verse 12. Really want to hit verse 13. But verse 12, famous verse. Right, verse 12 tells me it's not in heaven. Because if you say, who's going to send to the heaven for us and take it for us so we can listen to it and perform it, i.e. it's not in heaven. But if it would be in heaven, simple explanation is I'd have to run after it. I'd have to try and go to heaven in order to get it. Right, our verse that I want to speak about, verse 13. Nor is it across the sea. For you to say, who can cross the other side of the sea for us? Take it for us so that we may listen to it and perform it. So it's not in heaven. It's not across the sea. Right, it's accessible. It's definitely accessible. Whoever wants it, whoever wants it. So a person can say, oh, it's in heaven. If it's in heaven, how can I get it? If it's across the sea, how can I get it? So it says, Mori Rebbe, Arav going to Moshe Moshlita, should be well. He brings it down in his book, his commentary on Chumash, Tam V'das. And he says like this, brings down a medrash. What does the medrash tell me? The medrash says, Lo Bal Shamayim, Torah's not in heaven. That means somebody who's conceited. Somebody who's conceited doesn't have Torah. Not possible for him to get Torah. Because he's conceited. Right, being in the heavens, being lofty. Right, being way up there. So the Medrash says it's talking about somebody who's conceited. And somebody who's conceited is not going to have Torah. Then our verse says, Lo Me'ever L'Yam. Right, in other words, he doesn't have to cross the sea. And he says that is, Torah's not found by people who work. Now I'm going to have to clarify this. People who are in business, let's say. What do you mean? Aren't there religious businessmen? Right? For sure they're religious businessmen. Right? So what does this statement mean? We're going to have to see. So the Medrash says further, in the name of Shmuel, he says the Torah's not found by people who look in the heavens, by astrologists, or people who are stargazers, etc. Why not? How do I know they don't have Torah? Because it says, Torah tells me, verse 12, chapter 30, verse 12, it says, Lo Bal Shamayim, Torah's not in heaven. So it's not in heaven. If it's not in heaven, forget about astrologers. Right? Forget about astrologers. You're not going to find it by them. So who do we find Torah by? Says the Medrash, Torah is only found by someone who works hard for the sake of heaven. Right? For holy things. He's working hard for the sake of heaven because he wants to become close to God. That's who the Torah is found by. The Medrash says, okay, according to you, Shmuel, if that's what you hold, that the Torah is only going to be found by people who are striving in Torah, doing it for the sake of heaven, keeping it for the sake of heaven. There's only one problem with your statement. What's your problem? He says you're an astrologer. Right? You look to the heavens. So how can you say it's only found by somebody? Somebody works hard in Torah, then obviously it's not found by you. Seemingly a contradiction. So, Shmuel answers, he says, all my life, I didn't look into this wisdom except on a few occasions. Right? Seemingly, he seems to say when I was in the bathroom. Then I looked into things. Right? Because you're allowed to think of science, math, other things when a person's in the bathroom. So he said, but that's the only time I thought about it. So you can't really say I'm an astrologer or whatever because I never looked into this wisdom except when I was in the bathroom. So Rebbe then says, in the name of the Rabbeinu Bachai, says the Rabbeinu Bachai, the prophet Isaiah, chapter 55, what does Isaiah say? He says, why should I run after money? Why is money so valuable? Because money can buy bread. Right? In other words, why are you going to run after money if you don't have bread? Right? Not that you buy bread with it, but some reason Isaiah says you can have this money, but you're not going to have bread. How is that? Because he says you waste money. What do you waste money doing? You waste money acquiring knowledge you don't need, that the soul cannot get nourished by. And it's not like bread. Right? Then the Navi says, the prophet tells us, Isaiah says further, he says, by the work of your hands you're going to strive, you're not going to be satisfied. In other words, you're going to get to the end of your days, your soul is going to be famished. The soul you didn't give anything. Why? Because you were doing other things. You were interested in other things. So he says everything you should do should be in Torah. Now again, it doesn't mean you can't make a living. Right? Certainly not. That's not what he's saying. He says, I want you to enjoy this world. And what's the most important thing in this world, Torah? Nothing more important. So if nothing's more important, person gets caught up in all these wisdoms, so to speak, what's going to happen? You're going to burn out the soul. The soul itself is going to get burned out. You're not going to satiate it because it needs spirituality. And instead you fed it with garbage. So here he says, he goes on to say, Rabbeinu Bachai goes on in great detail, talk about the importance of learning Torah, and the fact that if a person learns secular things, and that's really to them the most important thing, he says there's no such thing as something in the secular world that's not going to have something that's bad. Some bad aspect. Whether it's heresy, whether it's just a waste of time, or it's going to affect you in a negative way. So he says, comes along the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah gives a mashal, gives an example. And he compares wisdom to money. Right? It's a parable. He compares wisdom to money. So he says, when a person's striving, working hard to make money. Going to be a lot of thorns along the way. He's not going to come out pure over here. But Torah itself, when it's compared to money, silver, right, that's something else. It should be as important as money. Because everybody knows. But if I would ask everyone right now, tell me how much money you have in your pocket, most people could probably tell me almost to the penny. Or the euro. Or whatever. But if I would ask the question, what did Rashi say last week's Parsha? You can say, Rashi who? Did he play for the Yankees? Rashi who? So what's going on over here? Well, what's the point? What's the point of the Medrash? Point of the Medrash here is that a person can do a lot of things with money. You can help a lot of people, support schools, support rabbinic scholars. A lot of positive. Person can also waste his money. What could he waste his money on? He could waste it acquiring wisdom that's secondary, that the soul does not get nourished by. So the idea is a person, again, if it's for the sake of livelihoods, you need to take some courses, you need to get a certain level of education, for that livelihood, okay. We're talking about extraneous things. We're talking about things that a person doesn't need. So he says, these things are in the background. These things are not important. And the soul is not going to get nourished by them. So this gets into the whole question of what is the purpose of secular studies. Now, a lot of yeshivas, after a certain grade, they don't teach secular studies in the outer Orthodox world. They'll teach a little bit of math, a little bit of English, right? Maybe grammar, writing essays. But in most places, it's, I would say, mediocre at best. Because that's not the focus. What is the focus? Focus is teaching them Torah. Giving them the ideals to live by to produce the next generation of rabbinic scholars. And the next generation are women that want to be married to rabbinic scholars. Or want to be married to people that dedicate their lives to Torah. So a person is going to have an issue with this. I'm sure many will have issue with this. And they'll drink the Kool-Aid. And they'll say what everyone says. You want to do anything in this world, you have to have a degree. Now, for some things, that's true. Some things, that's definitely true. For many things, it's not true. Person opens up his own business. He needs classes in order to open up a business. Doesn't need classes. Does he have to know what he's doing? Not necessarily. Can he get trained on the job? 100%. But obviously, you got to know what you're doing. Doesn't mean I have to take 4 years of classes that are useless. Aren't going to help me in business. Or many other things. But everybody says, most people, I shouldn't say everybody, most people will say 100% that it's crucial for someone to have a degree. So a person who goes out to the workforce, been learning many years, so in certain ways they're at a disadvantage. Because they've been learning, after a certain point, you don't learn secular things. So now, they interview for a job. When they interview for a job, someone else also interviewing for the job. Both, let's say, are qualified. One has a degree, one doesn't. most likely, I'm not saying across the board, but most likely, the person with the degree will be higher. Now, to me, having a university degree, that's a fallacy. Why is it a fallacy? Because what do I care what classes they took? What do I care they take 4 semesters of a language? Or that they take a few semesters of a social science? Or, and the majority of classes have to be in their major. Whatever that is. Most people, whatever they major in, do not use it. Especially if you're in the liberal arts. If a person gets a degree in engineering, pre-med, other things, okay. That's probably a lot more practical. But the vast majority of people who major in something don't use it. So then this comes into play. Because now you're learning a lot of different things. You're learning about a lot of different subjects. Useless. Doesn't help you. People will swear by it, it does. And tens of thousands, of dollars flushed down the toilet. But they'll swear that's important. Gotta be more well-rounded. Can't be closed-minded. Gotta look at everything. You gotta have the experience. I don't know. Sounds like a big waste of money. Someone wants to be a graphic designer. They have to go to college. Take a course or 2. That's it. Again, I'm not saying across the board you don't have to go to college. There are many things you don't need it for. There are some things you may need it for, okay? But the vast majority of people will say, even if you're not, whatever you major in, you're not going to use, you're going to go further in something else. So you wasted your time on all these classes. So I've had people ask me over the years, did you have classes that were beneficial? There were some that were beneficial. That mean I had to waste 4 years of my life taking all these other classes that weren't? Vast majority. So really, the question is, okay, even if you're going to claim it's important to have a degree, but most of the class I'm not going to use, quote unquote, in real life and for my major, so why am I getting the degree? Now many people will tell you, you have to get it because you can't do anything without it. So regardless, you use some of it, you don't use some of it, regardless of that, what are you going to do? You're going to go on further and do whatever you're going to do. Or maybe you just won't. You get a job and go from there. But in the end, you've taken many classes, and you can't do anything with them. So some people would argue it's important to be well-rounded. The Renaissance person, right? You learn a lot about a lot of different things. According to them, that's what makes you a better person. Your mind is open to all kinds of things, right? It's open-minded until they fall on the floor, right? Until your brains fall on the floor. Does that mean, you got to take all these semesters of classes that are a waste of time? You'll get something out of it anyway. Not a waste of time. My language, total waste of time. Now that being said, is there a value in knowledge for knowledge's sake? And the answer over here, Rabbeinu Bachai says, no. Because it's secondary. What's it secondary to? Torah. Nothing more important than Torah. You learn this, you're taking away from Torah. Again, if you're doing something for the sake of making a living, and you have to take certain class or whatever to do it, it's one thing. You gotta waste 4 years doing it? Certainly not. But again, people have drank the Kool-Aid, shut off their brains, and basically said, this is what you have to do. You want to succeed, this is what you have to do. But we see that's not true. Person specializes in a trade or a craft or something. I don't need college for that. Person wants to be a locksmith. I need to go to college. Person wants to be an electrician. I need to go to college. What do I need to go to college for? Apprentice with somebody, teach you electricity. That's it. Get certified. There you go. I need to waste 4 years of college. Tens of thousands of dollars. But even if people will say you're right, probably a lot of the classes are a waste of time. And they're not going to help you in life. But they'll say it's still a good thing to do. And you're getting knowledge. And knowledge isn't something to sneeze at. Because when you don't have Torah, that's all you have. When you don't have Torah, all you have is the secular stuff. So even if you don't like it, what do parents say? Just do it. Because it's going to help you out in life. It's going to help you up the corporate ladder. And maybe to a certain extent that's true. Because it's so important to have a degree. It just means society's brainwashed. Society's keeping the colleges in business. Because they want to brainwash you and say this is something you absolutely have to do. Because if you don't, you won't be able to do anything in this world. But again, that is very debatable. Many people very successful, no college education. Maybe they got lucky. Maybe. But does college, university make someone a better person? Does it make them a more moral person? And the answer is, it doesn't. I heard a great rabbi once say, kids come out worse than when they went in. They didn't go to university or college and come out more humble. They didn't come out better people spiritually. So some would argue, but that's not what the point of college is. But see, we don't care. But what do we care about? We care about serving God. We care about striving to be the best we can in God's eyes. And in spiritual terms. So to us, spirituality is everything. Okay, so a person has to get a degree. A person has to focus on something, okay. So that you have to do, and you have to do it in the right way. But as a means in and of itself, what benefit is there? What, so a person learn how to write a little bit better? I mean, today it's easy. You go on to Word, Microsoft Word, it's got spell check. They check for grammar, fragments, other things. Person can write away and get everything checked for them. So they say, come on, you got to put in the effort, you got to work hard, you got to this. Okay, I'm not saying not, but it's made very easy today. These things do not make someone a spiritual person. Person has to be very strong when they're in that environment. A lot of heresy, certainly a lot of immorality, immodesty, a lot of bad things. So you're going to say, but look at the end result. What is the end result? The end result, I have a piece of paper now. I have that degree. If I have that degree, it's worth okay. Maybe you stumble here, maybe you stumble there. But this is what you got to do. That's what people tell you. This is what you absolutely have to do. Comes on the Rabbeinu Bachai. This is not me. This is Rabbeinu Bachai. Right? One of the Torah giants hundreds of years ago. Wrote a magnum opus on Chumash. Also happened to write Chovos Levavos, Duties of the Heart. Unbelievable thinker. What does Rabbeinu Bachai say? Acquiring, quote unquote, all these wisdoms is tuffle. Is tuffle to spirituality, to learning Torah. Secondary. Doesn't mean I may not have to learn something to make a living, provide for my family. True. But the reality is it's secondary. It's not the most important priority. The most important priority is, how do I serve God? What do I do when I wake up in the morning? How much do I learn? What did I accomplish? What do I have to work on? Right? What are the character traits I have to work on to fix? The other stuff is secondary. The other stuff is external. And this is why in many yeshivas they don't teach that much secular things. You want to get it, you get it later. Your time right now is focused on learning Torah. Getting the basics and how to learn. Taking it to the next level. There are modern Orthodox places that are much stronger in secular studies. Okay? But that doesn't mean they're better. Doesn't mean they certainly can learn better. And the majority of rabbinic scholars today are not coming from that camp. I'm not saying they don't have. But they're not coming from that camp. So why is that? Why is it a number of years ago here in Israel, there were 22 rabbinic court judges that were approved by the chief rabbinate. 15 out of the 22 came from my camp. Came from the ultra-Orthodox camp. Do the math, that's 58%. Almost 60%. You're going to say it discriminates against the modern Orthodox community? Maybe. But who does the chief rabbinate want? They want the cream of the crop. They want the best. They want the most knowledgeable. So where are the most knowledgeable coming from? Not from the modern Orthodox camp. Why not? Because their focus isn't on learning. They're not saying learning is not important. But when you see how they live their lives, not all of them, but when you see a lot of them, how they live their lives, when they're into sports, they're into entertainment, they're into other things. I'm not saying they don't learn Torah. I'm not going to go that far. But they're weaker. Why are they weaker? Because that's not the focus of their life. In the ultra-Orthodox world, who's looked up to the most? Rabbinic scholars. Right? The focus is on learning. Not just acquiring knowledge. Right? It's about change. It's about being the best you can be. In the modern Orthodox world, that's not true. For many of them. Because they have this idea, I can be a rabbi doctor. I can get my rabbinical ordination. I can study, be a lawyer, a doctor, whatever. Get a PhD. No contradiction. And if you'd ask most modern Orthodox parents what would they want for their son, what would be better? For their son to be a rabbinic scholar, light up the generation in Torah, or be a doctor, lawyer, or accountant? So you're going to say, isn't it obvious? It should be. Torah scholarship is the most important thing. It's not about being a doctor, lawyer, or an accountant. But they'll be more embarrassed if their son's a rabbi than if he's a doctor or lawyer. Because what does a doctor or lawyer bring? Prestige. Honor. Right? Not to mention money. It's also a perk. Be a rabbi, not such a great profession to go into. But by many of them, they look down on it. Saw it with my own eyes. Was part of that community at one time. Many years ago. So again, are there serious, learners in that community? Yes. Are the vast majority? I wouldn't say that. And the reason is their focus is backwards. Their focus is skewed. So if you have to learn secular things, fine, you're doing it to make a living. It's not the ultimate. It's certainly not the most important thing. They make it into the most important thing. Again, not everybody, but we see. See what they say. See what some of the rabbis say. God should have mercy. Some of them are lunatics. Heretics. And what's the main reason? They're exposed to too many things. They open themselves up too much. And that cracked them. When people can say, quote unquote, rabbis can say, homosexuality is not a problem. When they can say, King David, Abraham, Jacob, Job, others had some sort of mental illness, depression. We have any idea who these people are? We don't have any idea. You, 2,500, 3,000 years later, say, no, I understand them. I understand their character traits. I understand what they went through. So good, I get it. I'm going to put my 21st century spin on it. It gives you a right. You have any idea who these people are? King David, Jacob, our forefathers. You're not even an ant compared to them. You're not even the crust between their toes. You, meaning us, we're nothing compared to them. Nothing! And someone's got the audacity. Someone's got the audacity to say, I'm going to put my 21st century spin and say who these people were, who these great people were. No. How can a person go that far? How can someone say homosexuality is okay? Because their brain is fried. Their outlook is skewed. How did it get skewed? They acquired secondary wisdoms. When you acquire a secondary wisdom, which means you learn other things other than Torah, secular things, for learning secular things, not for a living, it can 100% have a negative effect. So again, is the ultra-Orthodox community perfect? No, not by any stretch. But my question is, who is producing in the next generation? I'm not saying they don't have rabbinic scholars. Right? But where are they coming from? The reason they're coming from my camp is because the focus is on learning at all costs. The focus is how important it is. And how much we have to dedicate our lives to it. Because otherwise we let other things in, other wisdoms in. You don't have to. We don't need it in order for someone to make a living. And again, if you would ask most people, they tell you most of the classes I took were useless. Waste of time. But everyone will tell you it's so important to have a degree. But a person even getting a degree they don't come out the same as if they went in. If they live on campus, 10 times worse. If they don't live on campus, you got a chance. But a lot of things you're learning are heretical. Certainly, take it for granted the Torah is not true. Bible's just fantasy, it's a myth. A lot of other things. Not to mention the way people dress, how they speak. But he's not even talking about that. He's talking about acquiring wisdom that's not going to help you in this world. Just the opposite is going to take you away from this world. Right? Meaning it's going to take you away from God. It's going to take you away from spirituality. So don't get caught up and drink the Kool-Aid and listen to everyone and their mother say, oh, it's so important to have a degree. Because at the end of the day, 100% is not true. The only thing we have in this world that's important is Torah. And that we have to work very hard to acquire. And there ain't anything more important than that. And when you veer off and try and acquire these quote-unquote wisdoms, they will have a negative effect. And we see that it does. So I want to remind everyone, I have a class on Duties of the Heart every Tuesday, 9 o'clock New York time. I also have a class on the book of Leviticus every Sunday, 9 o'clock New York time, Leviticus chapter 14. 2 Q&As, Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock in the morning, New York time. I have conversion classes Sunday and Thursday. Anyone has any questions on any of these classes, feel free to contact me beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.